Just mute, please. If we can just all of us mute our mics. Please. Okay, let me start again. Honorable members, you are welcome to the Portfolio Committee meeting on tourism. We also take this opportunity to welcome our Honorable Minister, Mamuluku Kubai, accompanied by the Honorable Deputy Minister Fish Mathalela, the Collective of Tourism Department led by Ntate Tarache from the administration side, and also the administration of the Portfolio Committee. We are also taking this opportunity to welcome members of the public of South Africa who are on different social media platforms, who have got an interest in what we are going to be dealing with today as Portfolio Committee on Tourism. Honorable members, as you all know, the numbers in as far as casualties around those who have contracted the virus are going higher and higher. We also know that those who are perishing as a consequence of the coronavirus, the number is also going higher and higher. Here in the province of the Northwest, we have lost an MEC of Cocta. May his soul rest in peace. There are also, I think, 2 members of the executive, including the Premier, who have contracted the virus. We want to take this opportunity to send a message of condolences to all the families affected throughout the Republic of South Africa, throughout the world. And we also want to take this opportunity to wish those who are recovering from the coronavirus a speedy recovery. We also want to urge all South Africans to make sure that we take all the necessary precautionary measures to make sure that we reduce as drastically as possible the possibility of contracting the virus. We all know the distance that we need to keep of 1 meter, 1.5 meters to 2 meters. We also know that we need to be washing and sanitizing on a regular basis. We must never get tired of sanitizing and washing our hands. We also know that we need to make sure that the places where we stay, we fumigate, we sanitize, the schools where we work. We also know that we must make sure that when we cough, we either protect ourselves with something so that we don't spread the germs. We also know, honorable members, that we need to abide by the directives of the Coronavirus Command, National Command Council. If we can speak to our people to only move around when it is necessary to do so, and that at all material times, we must make sure that we've got our protective masks so that we can reduce the risk of contracting the virus. It is in that context that we are meeting here today. If it was not because of COVID-19, we will not be sitting like this as a committee and the rest of Parliament to consider supplementary manifestations of the supplementary budget. If it was not because of Corona, we'll not be sitting here and revising the numbers upwards and downwards. As it is today, we are going to be getting a briefing from the department led by Minister Kubai to brief us about whether one of the 3 things may have happened to our department. Only 3 things can happen to the budgets. 1, the budgets can either be revised upwards or downwards. Lastly, be left as it is. So in the course of the presentation by the minister, they will indicate to what extent or in which category do we fall as the tourism sector? We welcome you all, and once more we want to repeat the message of keeping ourselves safe. I hope the minister has now joined us. We are going to be taking this opportunity to hand over to the minister to do the necessary presentation and the introductions. Thereafter, we will allow the members to freely interact with the presentation. In case I get cut, honorable members, because it does look like there might be problems of connectivity along the way. Honorable Luziso Makubela Shady Lucy will then be taking over in case anything happens. I just thought that we need to bring that to the attention of the committee and those who are watching at home. Honorable Minister Mamuluku Ngubani Kubai, over to you, my sister.
Thank you very much, Chair. Greetings to you, Deputy Minister, members of the Portfolio Committee, honorable members, support, the Director General together with the senior leadership of the department. We appreciate this opportunity to come and brief the portfolio today while we continue with our work as tourism being one of the hard-hit portfolios or sectors by the COVID-19. Chair, the first thing I need to say is that from our APP, because we had an opportunity to amend our APP, our strat plan as we tabled and we engaged with the portfolio, it remains the same. You remember that we had kept the old figures and we did indicate that once the Minister of Finance has tabled the revised budget, will come back to brief the portfolio committee, which is this opportunity we have today. With that, Chair, I need to indicate that as we are aware, many of us, we are like today, we are briefing you today after the announcement of the enhanced level 3. We're looking at major of our sector coming back after our presentation. I continue to echo the sentiments to say ours as the portfolio, we always look at what needs to be done. Our wish list and we submit it. It gets processed through a rigorous process in the process of government until the final announcements that are announced. And continuously work is being done. We would note that as we looked forward to opening of many of our activities, unfortunately, Chair, it happens as many of the areas in this opportunity seeing a rise of spike in terms of the infections. The number of people who are getting infected, as you are saying, it's no longer about only statistics. It's the people that somebody knows in their homes. And it's sort of sometimes it is fear announced. So that by its nature as well, it has an impact, because when you look at some of our restaurants who have opened, I've taken time to visit several of our restaurants who are opened, especially those that do not sell alcohol, because those who sell alcohol have always argued that they are not able to make a business because they do not have the license, they are able to sell alcohol for sit down. But when you look at those that do not even have licenses to sell alcohol, I've interacted with some of them, and you'd understand the severity. People are staying at home voluntarily. You open, some of them were saying, I do not even have, if I have 10 clients per day, actually I'm being lucky. So we're seeing that as we take efforts as government to open the tourism sector or even the economic sectors, you find the challenge of people being wary because they're seeing the number of the virus going up, the number of the infected people going up. They're seeing a number of people dying that they know in their families and everybody. Or even major is that many of the people are starting to have to be in quarantine for 14 days or isolate because they've been in contact with somebody who's turned positive. So that's the reality and that's the context of our presentation today, where we find ourselves as tourism. It continues to be a difficult environment that we operate under. And you'd understand, Chair and members, honorable members, is that when you look at what we are tabling today, which the Director General will will take us through the presentation, we will take note that we've been able to proactively identify the areas where we do note that we are going to have difficulty to implement them because of COVID-19. And I'll make an example and we'll come to the presentation. Issues such as market access. Market access, we are not able to spend or have activities around those due to the fact that many of the exhibition, many of the conferencing that we normally take people for those market access are not taking place. Now, part of what the implications thereof means, Chair, is that major of our transformational targets, our transformational goals that we have as the department are going to suffer a regress. Because if we're not able to get these businesses into market where they can sell their products for sustainability, the challenge is that, or the likelihood is that they are going to find themselves in a very difficult position. So that's the first thing I want to say as we present today. The other issue, Chair, in terms of the finances, you note that some people confuse what we have done and all that, but we'll report. And when we come for the annual report, we'll come back and give you in detail what we have done for the TRF. TRF belonged to the last financial year. So it's not in this financial year. You are not going to find it. But being here, I want to report that we've made quite good progress. We've been, despite the challenges of the court, delays, and I hope those who have been believing that our intention is to discriminate against white business. I hope today they've been proven otherwise, Chair, because ours was never about discrimination, but emphasis of people complying with the South African laws, emphasis of recognizing that BBBE remains one of the policies of this government, and we have to continue to ensure that we are able to transform the economy, we are able to transform the sector for the betterment of the whole country. And I always say that without everybody being included in our economy, then our democracy is at risk. So we need to continue to acknowledge those policies were put in place for a particular reason. So we'll come when we report at our annual report, because the issue of TRF belongs to the last financial year. We'll report at that time. What we will see in this financial year, Chair, is the allocation that we have announced of the tourism guides, where we've acknowledged that many of them have not been able to receive support, and therefore we needed to find mechanisms to give them some level of support. In terms of the process, we had asked the provincial registrars to assist us in terms of verifying the details of the tour guides registered, provide us with the information to national so that we can be able to look at that. We take that information, go and verify with Home Affairs to validate that those individuals are still alive. Secondly, we send it to UIF to verify if they have not been benefiting from UIF, because we want to avoid double dipping. So the first batch of them have come back. We've had difficulties with one or two provinces where, for example, one of the provincial office was closed due to COVID. So we had to have some level of understanding so that we can be able to provide support for those and not be harsher. So that province as well catching up to be able to provide us with the information. And we are almost at the point, because we did not want to pay unless UIF has confirmed that these individuals have not benefited. So we have been able to find some amongst the list that we've received who have benefited out of UIF. So we are removing them from the list, and then we'll be paying those. So the feedback from UIF actually came back this week. So part of that first batch will be processed as soon as possible for them to receive. So that's in a nutshell, Chair, just to say. But maybe as I conclude and give the DG to give over to the DG to present, while I have the DM as well can come in. If I forgot something, just to indicate, colleagues, we're meeting today, and I need to indicate one of our colleagues, it's a last week with us, unfortunately. We are sad that she's leaving us. She's taken early retirement. She will be departing, DDG Murunga, so it will be her last committee meeting, chairperson with honorable members. So we have done our part in terms of wishing well. It's a difficult process when you get people leaving you but we do understand the circumstances. So we have wished her well as the department, but we've encouraged her not to be a stranger into the portfolio, because this is an individual who spends about 30 years of experience in the public service. So she remains with valuable information, valuable guide that we always source from her when the need arises. So thank you very much, Chair. That's it from my side. We'll come back after the questions.
Thank you very much, Minister. Before we give over to the head of department to do the presentation, we want to appreciate the Minister for you having brought to the attention of not only the portfolio committee, but South African public at large that is on different social media platforms, to be aware that we have been having in our ranks a very loyal, disciplined, focused, hardworking, passionate woman, Mema Morong, who has been part of the public service. We came in last year around this period. We've been working together with her. We know the extent of her depth in as far as the dynamics of issues of tourism in particular and public service in general is concerned. We want to wish her well, the family, everybody else, and we hope that the experience you have on Smoronga will not only be kept to the family, but you will continue somehow, wherever you will be, to contribute to the construction of this united, democratic, non-racial, non-sexist, and a prosperous society. Because the experience we have accumulated over the years cannot be measured in commercial terms. We can't compare it to anything else. Moreover, because you are a woman, because we seek to build a non-sexist society. We hope that in your voluntary work, you will continue to work with the NPOs and the NGOs to train young men and women who are in the tourism sector or who have got the potential to get into the tourism sector. So keep in touch, my sister. We will miss you, but not forever, because you'll still be with us in the Republic of South Africa. Tate Tarake, the opportunities for you to take us through the presentation. Honorable members, in the course of you interacting with the presentation, you can say whatever farewell words we also want to say to House Morong. Tate Tarake, over to you.
You are muted,
DG. DG, if you can unmute. DG, we can't hear you. We just see the presentation scrolling on the screen.
DG has been cut off, Chair. If they can, yeah. He's trying to upload the presentation, so he got cut off.
Oh.
I don't know if the administrators, maybe they can upload the presentation so that he can be able to, he's back, yeah.
I can upload it if
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, you upload it, but also we must bring to the attention, Minister, you did very well. We got the presentation and all members have got the presentation. It was sent to all of us. Yeah. So Ndadema Semola, you can do the uploading and then
Yes.
The presentation can be done. Here we go.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, Minister and DM, and colleagues. Honorable Chairperson, we will go through this presentation. We will be brief, given that indeed we have already come here with the APP and we've gone through the details of the APP. Suffice to say that as we explain the adjustments in the budget, these adjustments are already taking into account the adjustments that were done into the APP. So I thought I should state that, Honorable Chairperson, so that it then flows with the understanding that we are talking about all the activities in the APP having been appropriated for even after we have done the adjustments, given that we had already adjusted that particular APP. So we'll go through the issues around the COVID impact as well as the COVID recovery issues. Then we'll go into the details per program of how the changes have been effected onto the budget itself. Going to slide 3, we have already shared this previously with the committee. And honorable members would recall that previously we had reported, and this was as valid up to, I would say, around May, and more work is being done. So we will have further survey data that would also come at a later stage. But it is important to take note of the fact that the decline, which was estimated to be as much as 440 million international tourists globally, as well as the 5 to 7 years worth loss of the export revenue that would have come from the tourists. This is significant in that it says to us the same sort of trend would also be with us. And it then justifies what we had already done with regards to being conservative and looking closely at whether the things that we were saying we were going to do were actually going to be doable at that particular point in time. And there is an indication that the recovery could take anything between 12 and 24 months. And as we go, this period also, 12 months in some instances could even be a bit optimistic in terms of full recovery. So we are still in for uncertain times ahead. We are still in for very difficult times ahead, both for the industry, but also for human life from the point of view of the pandemic. So as we go, and as we continuously adapt and adjust, we will always take note of the fact that the environment is not the same and we're operating in a new normal. We then will move on to areas that have been affected. The next slide would be the areas that have largely been affected broadly with regards to the adjustments. And those adjustments, Honorable Chairperson, are downwards. Obviously, as we previously reported and also reported by our marketing entity, South African Tourism, the marketing part of our business has largely been affected because of the environment in which we operate. And as such, it would not have made sense to continuously put messages about come to South Africa and so on out there in an environment where everybody is just barely struggling to survive and stay alive. The second area that was affected, and that would be the biggest area that has been affected with regards to the budget, and we'll talk about how much. The second area that was also affected by the adjustments to the APP in particular was the work around expanded public works program. And in particular, this would be the work that relates to capital projects, as well as the work that relates to training projects. And this is in relation to the fact that gatherings and also some aspects of construction at the time that we were dealing with the issues of the the adjustments to the APP were not as yet allowed. And going forward, and with the risks that we are facing and so on, one cannot necessarily say with absolute certainty that we will always be in an environment where certain gatherings would occur, or would always be in an environment where certain activities would occur. And hence, most of the activities in and around this were actually put towards the very end of the year. And at that time, the anticipation was that by the time we get there, we would actually have already done most of the planning work, and some work can begin. And that would also have direct effect, of course, on the issue of the job opportunities. The other area, and of course, on the other hand, in the classrooms were not necessarily something that was anticipated at that time in terms of people that would be going for training, including those that would actually be going to do their practical work and so on. So part of the planning was largely based on what could still be done online and all those kinds of things, and with the possibility that down towards the end of the year, there would be a possibility that there could be some opportunity to sit and get the actual training. The last area that I think is worth highlighting in terms of the areas that are somewhat challenged is the tourism incentive program. Honorable Chairperson and honorable members would remember that one of the areas that we had actually put, Paul, let's go, I'm about 4 slides from that one. Just go 2 more slides. No. Go back, sorry, go back. I haven't gotten, sorry, Paul, I haven't gotten into the spreadsheets. Just go up again, please. Up again, 1 more. Just go up again, 1 more, Paul, please. Yes, okay. So one of the things, before I speak to this slide, yes, I was on the, no, go down, sorry, honorable members. Go to slide 4. I'll just call them by numbers. Please go to slide 4. Thank you, Paul. The issue of, Honorable Chairperson, the issue of the tourism incentive program, there's a number of sub programs or sub activities that we do in that particular program, most of which have actually been affected by COVID. Amongst others would be the issues around, some of the issues around grading, the issue of Tourism Empowerment Fund, which was meant to really get to drive transformation and to come in within this particular financial year. Unfortunately, the environment does not necessarily allow for that. Businesses are currently really in a survival mode, and some are not even able to survive. So to really get that kind of an instrument now, which is actually geared towards drawing in investments and so on, it's not quite the most ideal environment as you say. The others, where we also still had an adjustment lower, was the Green Incentive Fund. We are going to continue with that one. We believe that it will actually assist quite a lot with regards to issues pertaining to the cost of doing business, but also to stay afloat. And this would relate to those businesses that would want to either retrofit with regards to energy or with regards to water. There is sufficient capitalization of that particular program, or the money that we had in that particular program would be able to at least sustain it throughout the year. But we'll need to put speed in terms of the implementation of the program itself. Let's move to slide 5. Without going into too much detail about this particular slide, there has been talk about the recovery and the sequence of that recovery. What we are now picking up is that what factually will remain the case is domestic tourism will be the first point of recovery. But subsequent to domestic tourism, we can't for sure say that it is going to be followed by regional and then subsequently be followed by international. As an example, there are countries at the moment, a country like New Zealand, where they are starting to report almost 0 cases, no active case, and so on. Such a country would probably be a country that, if they were to travel to any other country, may actually be accepted first because of that. So it would probably a lot more depend on who seems to be travel ready with regards to the extent of cases within their domain and so on. So the more a country recovers, the more that country would most likely be a potential market that would then have to look at, as opposed to specifically regional, then subsequently going international. Even within the region, there are countries that are not necessarily pursuing a policy of testing, contact tracing, and all other precautionary measures that are supposed to be taken. And as such, they don't necessarily lend themselves, without mentioning countries by name, they don't lend themselves particularly to become an ideal in immediate market to be able to actually do business with. Let's move on, Paul, to the next slide. What we have done, we have got a slide that shows where the money is actually being adjusted. But below that slide, we then have a slide that specifically then would indicate which particular sub-program has been affected. So we will be jumping each slide. The other slide would provide the members with more details. In this particular slide, the indication is that we, in total, we have actually lost R1 billion. This R1 billion is made up largely of money that has been readjusted from South African tourism, which amounts to about 866 million rands. The remainder of the adjustments come from the various other programs. Program 1 in the department, which largely contributed that related to operational expenses around travel, subsistence, and those related issues. Program 2, the remainder of that, almost 4 or so million, that adds to make up the 870 when added to the 866 is also savings from the different other programs. We will then go and indicate where exactly we have taken some of that when we get to that particular program. And then we also have this 111 million adjustment from tourism sector support services, and that amount is largely coming from the tourism incentive program, as I reported. And the last one, but not the least one, destination development, about 14 million of that 16 million there is actually coming from the expanded public works related programs. Let's move on to the next slide. I've alluded to it, that the program 1 savings are coming from largely the travel and subsistence related expenses. Moving on to the next slide, which we have already indicated, travel and subsistence. Then let's go to tourism research policy and international relations. The first sub-program there is basically the DDG's office, and obviously those savings would, amongst other things, relate to the fact that right now we are actually connected online. The fact that we will not be sending anybody anywhere outside the borders of the country anytime soon, and so on. We will also not be having gatherings that are large numbers, whether it's branch-related planning activities and all those kinds of things. So those savings have actually come through in that regard. What I need to emphasize, including on research and knowledge management, most of the other researches that we're doing will not be focusing on those specifically. We'll be focusing a lot more on research that largely pertains to or associated with COVID-related impact and how we handle the whole aspect of adaptation going forward. The issues around, and there were other things that we were going to do there. For instance, we were going to have an innovation conference and all those kinds of things. Some of those things we are not necessarily going to be doing. International relations as well. We were going to be hosting countries within the region and within the continent, and we're going to have all these best practice workshops and so on, and we're going to also support activities around ministerial participation, which is it's actually designed in a manner that allows for the interaction of the minister with counterparts in the continent, and is part of our broader African agenda. Those are things that we're not necessarily going to be doing, and you can see how much they have actually reduced in terms of venues and facilities and so on. So by and large, these are COVID-related savings, so to put it. And of course, the larger amount coming from South African tourism, which is the 866. Moving on to the next slide, I propose that I skip this slide because I've spoken to it as I was going through each of those adjustments in the expenditure. Destination development, we've got savings in tourism enhancement, and this is the program that works with the likes of World Heritage Sites and also with parks and so on, doing a whole lot of enhancements. This is where we also do work such as the interpretive signage and all that. So that has been reduced by 700,000, and then destination planning and investment reduced by 1,700,000. In the main, this reduction is related to platforms where we would have actually taken South African exhibitions on what investment opportunities are there and so on, and most of that would actually, if not all, would actually not be taking place this year. So we have actually had that entire saving, and it has actually then gone to be part of that billion. The destination planning and rather the working for tourism, which is actually the EPWP, and I have alluded to the 14 that actually has been adjusted from that. Let's move on. I will pass the next slide because it talks to what I just explained. And then tourism sector support services. Let's go to the slide below. Then I will simply go through that particular slide, that table slide, where we've got the green incentive. I indicated that here we do have sufficient capitalization. We'll still be able to service the program adequately. All we need is to make sure that we put speed to it. Tourism incentive program, the transformation fund, a saving of 10 from that. And then we have got the market access program, which we will not be doing in the most immediate period because of COVID, as Minister explained, and that's about 7,822,000. And the tourism incentive program, as it relates to the tourism equity fund, we readjusted 50 million rands out of that. And then there are these other activities like the World Tourism Day celebrations, where the activations take place in the provinces and with festivities and making sure that we are showcasing that particular province or a part of a province that is not so well visited, but has got some worthiness in terms of making sure that the products that they have are shown to the South Africans. We will not be able to do that. Tour operators, incubator, we reduced that by 300,000. Most of the work is actually going to take place online. So no one is actually going to be sitting in some sort of a setting where that support will be done in that way, but it will all be done online. Women in tourism incubation, bulk of the work will also take place online with regards to this. There won't be the hands-on type of support that we had envisaged before we actually adapted the APP. And then feedback to 27 sites on climate change and vulnerability. What has happened here? There is work that has been done. It's concluded with regards to the extent of vulnerability and the impacts and so on. And these sites have already been identified, assessed, but the feedback needs to go back to the various sites to say, this is what needs to happen. This is how you need to get adaptation right and so on. We have reduced that because by and large, there was going to be a lot of travel to these sites and so on. Most of that would probably not happen physically, and it will have to happen electronically. FEDASA, we have got some sort of relationship where they, when we do the tourism, the National Careers Expo, there's a session that involves educators, and the educators are then taken through the full experience so that they've got an appreciation of what it is that they're actually going to deliver in the classroom and so on. So obviously that can happen in this kind of environment. Similarly, we've got a saving of more than 3 million, almost 4 million rands that is associated with the Tourism Careers Expo. And then we have got the local government peer learning network. This is related to people moving up and down, going to the different districts and so on. Work will still happen, and it's going to happen online, most of it. Journey to Service Excellence, the plan was that people would actually go to Harwich and they would do certain assessments, certain excavations. They would go to Mwase and they would do the same processes. And physically, in some of these places, going there is not necessarily going to be the case. There will be interaction, but it's going to be electronically as well in that regard. And then the other areas where tourism safety strategy implementation, as well as the initiatives to increase domestic travel, which also gets associated with the other side. This would, the last slide before the thank you slide, the understanding that we have, Honorable Chairperson, is that we are responding in terms of our APP to the current challenge that we are faced with regards to making sure that what we do would still be able to assist us either to maintain the product base or to ensure that the skill set by the time of recovery would be ready for that. So we will be focusing a lot more. We've got some resources that we have put in making sure that we focus on the maintenance of public facilities, the tourism facilities that are in the hands of state. We had started with the national parks, and there's going to be more work that will have to be done to look at the extent of the need and the prioritization. Of course, we don't have all the resources, but it is important to highlight this. We will be intervening in this particular area, and that would be the government side, if you will, the government side of making sure that the product base does not degenerate, and it would still be there by the time that we are ready to come back to business. I also would like to highlight that we are monitoring the environment very closely so that by the time we also come to the adjustment budget, we should be having sufficient information that tells us, is this the right time for us to be starting to get into the marketing? Is this the right time for us to be getting into promotions, to be getting into whatever agreements, whether it is to court the airlines so that they could start? Those will be the kinds of things that going into that particular environment we will then have assessed and will then have a better understanding of, is this the right time for marketing? And our hope is that when that time comes, as we knock at the door, then we may be able to get some favorable consideration going forward, understanding the environment within which all of us are and the difficulties with regards to the fiscus as we speak. But we do believe that tourism will definitely have a much greater role to play in that recovery when we actually get to it. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson.
Meeting. Thank you very much, DG. Minister, anything to amplify, or Deputy Minister?
I'm comfortable with from my side, Chair.
Deputy Minister, is there anything to amplify?
No, I'm okay, Chair.
Thank you very much, Minister, Deputy Minister, and the DG. Honorable members, there is the presentation. You now have an opportunity to interact with the presentation. We will start with Honorable Kumba.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity. Let me start by appreciating the presentation, as well as also saying to the committee that we are really going to miss Memorungwe because she played a very important role of training and development of the people who really needed to be trained and get capacity in terms of tourism. And we are saying, as the committee, we are daily going to miss her and thank her for the wonderful job that she has done for this country, and in particular in the tourism sector. Thank you very much. Chair, coming to the presentation, I think I'm covered by the presentation. I really don't have much to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Honorable Gumbi.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. And thank you very much for the presentation. And also indeed, I just want to echo the words of my colleague around that. After giving so many years to the public service, I think that anyone who has delivered that many decades needs to be commemorated, and well done. Chairperson, at the end of, Chairperson, when I listen to the presentation, the key thing that sticks to my mind in the specific period is how do we save the tourism industry from complete obliteration? There's a lot of businesses which have gone down, and it's going to hurt for a very, very long time. And there's a lot of reasons, obviously, in the adjustment budget that you can say why certain things have to be the way they are. So of course, it's not normal, and so many things are going to change. And so, but the key thing that I want to get to is that you don't get a sense of when necessarily is there going to be confidence back in the tourism sector as a sector which is going to provide jobs again, is going to be stable, and people can have confidence again. Now, we've had comments previously about the fact that we expect the sector to be up and running perhaps in December, and things do change quite rapidly. But if, for instance, let's just say that this large part of the sector, we want them to be operating profitably, to be employing people again around December, how almost does the budget speak completely to that? There should be, for instance, modeling which at this rate in time dictates necessarily when the sector will be operating again. And you don't get completely, I don't get a complete sense of that. I've been dealing, for instance, with one specific issue where I took a sector within the tourism sector, the charter boats industry, and I've been communicating with the minister's office around assisting that industry to be able to open up safely, to be making sure that, you know, people's lives aren't put at risk. And for whatever reason, I have had specifically around this issue challenges from the minister's office around that. So I haven't really gotten full answers around that. And usually I must say that, you know, whenever I write to the minister and to our office, I actually get a response fairly quickly and people get helped. But for whatever reason, like I'm having challenges with this. So perhaps maybe to put this in a question, I'd like to ask, for instance, with the charter boats industry in Durban, which specifically has itself put up representation to the minister and to the National Coronavirus Task Force, or whatever you call it. They've specifically tried to say that, you know, we want to be able to open up, we want to do so safely. When can they expect, for instance, a response, you know? Because many jobs are on the line in that specific space. What is the how and when and the predictability for the entirety of the recreational component of the sector to open up, so that people who have certain services can be able to do so quite easily and do so categorically. So I think that at the end of the day, I'd rather go to the core substance of saving jobs, whilst we understand that as well, we've got to make sure that we protect human life as far as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Gumbi. Honorable Moteka.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me welcome the presentation. And before I get into the presentation, a regular will say memorongwa o a tsere go nako ya gago e ngata ya bophelo wa gae a direla setšhaba. So ke re ya gae mama o ikhutša o ipsine le ditlogolo le family ka moka. Ke a go lebogiša. So, Chairperson, coming to the presentation is very bad and scary what COVID-19 is doing to us as the nation. My question is, because I can see and I can hear the DG saying this adjustment have taken 1 billion from their budget, meaning a lot of damage is done. So my question is, how many jobs or job opportunities will be affected by this adjustment? Because 1 billion is a lot of money, Chairperson. And then the grading cost, maybe just to encourage those who are struggling in this business of tourism. The grading cost, will you still be able to do away with it? The cost itself, not the grading. The grading being compulsory but free. Will you still be able to do it within this financial year? And again, Chairperson, the destination development have lost about 16 million. What is this saying to the job opportunities, more especially if 14 million was for EPWP? How many opportunities will be lost out of that? And what are we doing to ease that kind of pain? if you lost 60 million from this business development, what are you left with? And how does it affect the development of these nations or tourist attractions in the villages, townships, and small towns where your APPs was planning to do? Because the minister, in her responses 2 weeks back or 3 weeks, she even listed a lot of areas in the rural areas as she was answering to my question. And I was very happy because she even mentioned the areas in the rural areas, and that's what I was looking for all the time. So is this adjustment going to cut some of those? I think, Chairperson, that's why I will stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Muteka. Honorable Kalipa. Honorable Kalipa, the opportunity is now yours. Okay, let's now go to Honorable Krambo.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Yes,
proceed.
fine. Yeah, thank you. So I have a couple of questions for the Minister. We all have the same disadvantage in that this is a new pandemic and we don't really know enough about it even now. But one of the things that we have established perhaps in the last week or so, they're taking the Western Cape where it did seed first. It looks as though the peak is going to be later than expected and flatter. So one of those implications that flow from that is that if indeed our other provinces, all of which we would like to attract tourists when we are finally able to open up, have the same kind of thing, a flatter but later peak in infections, it may mean that the peak will not actually be at the end of August or beginning of September, but perhaps a little bit beyond that, which means we're getting very close to the Christmas period, which traditionally is when people take their annual leave and do some traveling. And if that in fact is the case, what has the Minister been doing, or how has the Department been strategizing around that, bearing in mind that we may not be in a position to capitalize on that simply because as much as we'd love to attract people from countries like New Zealand or Australia, possibly Switzerland, Austria, Germany, where there's very, very few or no active cases left. Certainly in the case of New Zealand, there was a period where there weren't any active cases. How will we be able to attract those people when they have a choice of going to a country which has got over the worst, or almost entirely over the virus, and yet we are still coming out of a very late peak? I think that is a practical consideration that I'd like to know what work has been done around modeling to see what is possible and what is not. Then my second and last question, Chair, is this, and I'm sorry to come back to that, but the Minister opened the meeting by referring to the COVID grant to businesses who met the BE requirements and expressed the hope that we would not see it as something racially based.
Yeah, your network is...
Yeah, can you hear me, Chair? Yeah, okay, I'm carrying on. I see the Minister nodding, so she can hear me.
I can hear, Chair. I don't know if it's your network.
Yeah, it might be yours.
No, you are nodding and you can hear. Proceed, Honorable Krambo.
Thank you. So she expressed that we'd hoped, she hoped that we would see it as merely implementation of government policy that exists rather than being racially motivated. And I would say if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. That is a simple philosophical logical statement. So I'm afraid it is something that has to do with the color of the employer. Now, if the department, as we've seen today, is forecasting a 12 to 24 month recovery period. There might well be calls for further assistance in getting up and running again rather than just getting through the virus. And I would assume then that much the same policy would apply. And we might be looking at qualification by means of BEE requirements being met. If, for example, you would apply to get something like a back on your feet once-off grant. What advice would the Minister give to potential employees when they look either to go back or maybe get into the tourism industry for the first time? Should they be looking at the race of the employer, bearing in mind that in terms of government policy, some businesses that they join will get the help and others will not? I would think it's a very practical consideration now, because there are many employees that will permanently lose their jobs because the employers are on color. And I would imagine many people will be saying, well, I got to be careful. I don't want to start a job with a company that might not be getting assistance in the future. So what advice does she have for potential employees? Thank you, Chair.
Is done, sir.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kabo. I hope the Minister had to, because the network on my side is a bit difficult. Honorable Miyeni. Honorable Miyeni. Honorable De Freitas.
Thank you, Chair. I hope everybody can hear me. I just wanted to specifically ask about slide 5. And slide 5 describes how the recovery is taking place, and it talks about the preceding slides. It talks about 12 to 24 months. I just want to find out how they reach this. How was this ascertained, considering that there are many countries that are in fact already have already opened their borders, in various examples worldwide, where tourism has already started. So on what basis is this 24 months or 12 months discussed? And what is being done if this is supported by empirical data? How is this being communicated to the world so that the industry can start planning for it? Because the sense I get is government's just sitting waiting for this miraculous 24 months to go by. And in the meantime, no bookings can take place. The industry can't communicate to the rest of the world, where, for example, you're seeing various countries already advertising, various countries that are in fact closed, their borders are closed, but already telling the world and marketing their country right now. So there are two prongs to my question. What empirical evidence is it based on the 24-month cycle? And secondly, what is being planned for now, communicate to the world to revive tourism when the borders are open? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable De Freitas. Honorable Carlo. Honorable Carlo, the President of the AIC. Honorable Carlo.
You offered an apology, Chair.
Honorable Sitole.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Oqala sihlalo ukuthi sidlulisele ukubonga kakhulu ukuthi dadewethu official kuyena osethatha umhlalaphansi ukuthi umsebenzi uyabonakala ubewenza ngokwethembeka nangokuyinikela, esethemba ukuthi-ke njengoba esehlala phansi nje uzokwazi ukuthi mhlampe avule imfundiso yokuthi laba bangazi mhlampe bakwazi ukwazi ngendaba ze-tourism, nokuthi-ke angaqheli kakhulu ku-department mayifuna uncedo bekwazi ukuthola kuye, bekwazi ukuncela ulwazi analo. Sithi sengathi mase kufika isikhathi sokuhlala kahle nomndeni wakho umemukele ngendlela eyiyo. Chairperson, first of all, I have only 2 questions that I want to get it from the department. First one is that one, out of this 200 million, which was the relief fund, how many companies have been benefited from those benefit companies? If they can actually detail it and give us per province, how many per province have they benefited? And the other one, Chairperson, is that one of the recovery base, the recovery system, which the department will have. I'm trying to check their focus. Are they focusing on the domestic sectors or domestic companies, or they are even trying to check those international countries that don't have the pandemic as it happened in this country? And the other one, Chairperson, that I'm trying to check, they have their focus recovery on this on the sectors, because I'm worried that we can say they are just focusing for until December this year or until next year. But if you see the increasing of this COVID and the death that is happening, it seems that we are going to be more than 2 to 3 years now. So I'm trying to check what system do they have in place actually to focus in the coming years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sitole. Honorable Peter.
Thank you very much, my chair. Greetings to my colleagues as well. Chair, I cannot agree more with your statement that says we must
Just
continue
move a little bit back from your screen, slightly. Yeah, excellent.
Thanks.
Come forward a bit, just a bit.
Come, sir?
Yeah, just come forward a bit, slightly. Come forward a bit. Go back a bit, just slightly. Go back slightly. Go back. Yeah, good.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me thank you. Let me thank you, Chair. I cannot agree more about your statement that says we must continue with precautionary measures as the country. As the Eastern Cape, amongst many that we have lost, yesterday we learned that indeed the Queen of Amakosa, Noloyiso, has also succumbed, to COVID. So she was the mother of the Makosa nation, and may her soul rest in peace, Chair. Chairperson, the triple BEE, it's something that I think we have passed the stage. We need not to keep on explaining ourselves on it. Triple BEE is here to stay. But the only thing that we should do is just to act responsibly as we are doing as the department. We will continue with the triple BEE, but of course we have to make sure that we also bring the balancing act, make sure that other sectors are not also suffering. I think that's what we must do. Then if you go to slide 5, the recovery, and there's a sequence of the recovery. I think we are right to say we must focus on the domestic tourism when it comes to the recovery, Chairperson. Then the 1 billion rand that is lost, Chair, it's quite a lot of money. It's quite a lot of money. So maybe what we should consider, Minister, going forward through your office, Chair, if we are able to come back in full swing as Parliament, we must maybe consider convening a straight plan that will invite all the key role players before the end of this year. And then under one roof, we are able to delve deeper as to what is it that we think we should do moving forward, to turn around the situation. I think we need a 2 or 3 days workshop kind of, whereby we might even invite the president, the minister, make a full presentation to everyone, and that strat plan, of course, chaired by our chairperson throughout up to the last day. Maybe we should consider that and make sure that at least moving forward, we are able to take all the ideas from other stakeholders in the sector as well. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Peter. Honorable T.S. Kleko.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, all of you. Chairperson, let me, as a member of the committee, welcome the presentation with its adjusted budget. Reduced as it is, Chair, if it's used effectively and efficiently, it will change the lives of the people of South Africa. Chairperson, I also welcome the green light of the level 3 regulations on the opening of the tourism businesses. But I'm standing here to appeal to the public out there to observe and adhere to the precautionary measures of keeping safe, Chair. My question to the department is, are there monitors or any method of enforcement of level 3 regulations to tourism business, restaurants, or whatever attraction that is there? Now that the pandemic seemed to be, the virus is rumored to be airborne, it means if it's not in your house, it's in your doorstep, if not in your neighborhood, Chair. Let me also touch the issue that's interesting on the relief that's targeting freelancing tourist guides. That I appreciate, Chair. It's the same as what was implemented by the Department of Transport in assisting taxi drivers. How I wish that assistance can be extended to those that are working part-time in restaurants, as they were also affected, more so during level 5, Chairperson. When I come to the issue of the notice that I saw in the documents that we received from Jerry's office, there was a notice that was calling for submissions. I am asking myself, Chair, how long has it been out there? I am worried about the timing because I saw the deadline as the 31st of July. And we are still during level 3 lockdown. I'm considering, Chair, because the voice that we want is the voice of those that feel that they are left behind. The voice of those that feel the pinch. I am worried, Chair, because we are still during lockdown and there's a deadline of the 31st. I'm not asking the department, I'm asking Parliament now, our committee. What I can say to DDG Morongwe is the chairperson's words and the words from the latter speakers are also my words. I can just summarize by saying she must enjoy a stay at home with her family. She must use the skills that she has acquired during these years to capacitate others. Memerungwe, go well. You will be missed by us. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Okay, thanks, Honorable TS. Honorable Makubela.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me also echo the sentiments from my colleagues, which is yourself, Chairperson, and other honorable members in wishing Memo Rungwe a very farewell. May she retire gracefully and may she be covered in the umbrella of the Almighty God, who will protect her and give her long life as she go to retirement. Chairperson, I only have 2 questions to the department, to DG, Mr. Tarage. All I want to find out, Chairperson, is that whether the approximately 1 billion that is taken currently from our budget to deal with COVID issues, will Treasury or has Treasury taken an undertaking to say when the tourism is recovering, whether it be later in the year or the first phase of 2021, will that money be returned so that it supports the tourism recovery strategy? I just want to get the undertaking from Treasury so that we are at ease as the committee to understand that tourism is taken serious and the money that has been taken to be used elsewhere, which currently is very much needed to deal with the pandemic, it will be returned to our program, which is a tourism department. Chairperson, the second question that I have is around the issues of the EPWP work opportunities. Can perhaps the DG share with us this revised or adjusted budget? How does it affect those job opportunities? Can maybe he explain to us in percentage form to say so many job opportunities are going to be shared within this program of EPWP as a result of funds being shifted away from such program. And then I also heard the DG talking about the tourism greening program, which Chairperson, I must say, it is a very good program because it looks at how best can enterprises or businesses within the tourism sector be assisted in terms of maybe their energy efficiencies and so on, and that reduces their payment to electricity and other stuff. Perhaps can maybe the DG explain to us to say, because this program, I know for the past previous financial year, there wasn't anything on the program or it was not reported adequately. So currently, in line with the new APP and the revised strategy and the revised APP, what are the key elements that will see this money being used effectively, being used to benefit small BNBs within townships, within rural communities? Can that be quantified, and perhaps can we be assured as a committee to say this money will be channeled largely to benefit those small BNBs so that they can reduce their electricity consumption, and thus this will ensure that they have a little bit of savings into their pockets, and that can also sustain them in these trying times. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Makubela. Is Honorable April there? Okay, it doesn't look like we've got.
Hello,
Honorable
Chairperson.
April.
I am here.
Okay, proceed.
No, Chairperson, mine was just to welcome also the presentation. I've been following the meeting. I was waiting for my name to come up. Welcome the presentation from the department, and also just to wish Mama Godspeed with the retirement and thank her for the service that she has given of her life, even as an administrator to the cause of transformation in the country. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable April, and honorable members for the questions and the engagements and the proposals. Minister, from my side, it is just one or two things. The first one is around whether the department has looked at what is the possible worst case scenario and how we are preparing for that possible worst case scenario, and what will be the best case scenario and how we are preparing for that best case scenario. Because yes, gradually the tourism sector will be opening up. People will now be allowed to be sitting in restaurants and so on. But we all know that they are not going to make profit. So they will just be in a survival mode. So the difficulty is going to be those who have just started to get into the sector, running small businesses, and those who were still on the plans of starting to get into the sector itself. So those who are small and those who are starting have got no access to capital that will cushion this devastating economic environment, also linked to the coronavirus. I know that the matter relating to how we prepare for the worst case scenario is not necessarily in the hands of the department. It's more on how the department will be working with the rest of the participants or the role players in the tourism sector. So it is in that context to say, we don't know what will happen. I know that experts are saying we are now on a surge, there will be a peak, and then the graph is likely to flatten. But the reality is that we don't know what is going to be happening. That is what is the reality. We don't know what will be happening 6 months from now, 12 months from now. Yes, there are those who are in a hurry to open and so on because businesses are affected. And at the same time, when things go wrong, they blame the department. And when actually it's not, the department doesn't run hotels and lodges and B&Bs and all these other activities which drive our tourism sector in the Republic. What the department does is to try and make sure that coordination, communication, issues of infrastructure that is government related, the little bit that is there in the budget is used to create an environment that will enable people to move forward in as far as participation in the tourism sector is concerned. So I just wanted to know if we have done that scenario and risk planning. If not, we can get it in future. Honorable Typo, we get your point. Remember, as a committee, we agreed that for the next 4 years, starting this year, we are going to be reporting to the people of South Africa on the extent to which there has been transformation in the tourism sector for the last 26 years and the plans that are in place to aggressively drive transformation in the tourism sector. So we said we'll be doing that every September. So this process will culminate into us releasing a report on transformation as part of oversight in September, towards the end of September. Before the report is released on what the public is saying, we are going to be sitting down with the department so that together we can go through that particular report. I think the proposal you are making, nobody will oppose it, that we can leave the process open-ended. And what we do in September is to give the public what we have at our disposal. And every year we we do that, particularly around the achievements and the plans going forward. So I don't think it will be a major issue, the matter that you are raising, because of the conditions we find ourselves in, where people don't have access to all the social media platforms to send their information, their proposals, and so on. So I think your proposal is okay. Honorable Minister, Mamuluku and Deputy Minister, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. We've got on the line as well as our DDGs. I'm going to ask, I think there are quite a number that relates to DDG Chetia. DG will come in, but also DDG Murunga. I don't think there's anything for DDG Tuma that I picked up, but will come later after they've responded. So I'll allow the DDGs and DG to come through, respond to the issues, and then we'll come in myself and DM later.
Thank you, Chair and Minister, and the colleagues. I'm going to respond on the question on how many entities have received the TRF in terms of provinces, the split provincially. Maybe I'll start first to indicate that the 200 million kept at 50,000 was going to support 4,000 entities. At this point in time, we have received 7,293 applications, and what we have managed to pay at this point is 3,861. That is nationally. Province-wise, starting first with the Western Cape, we had 1,875 applications. We have managed to approve 936. For Northern Cape, we have received 222. We're able to approve 119. For Northwest, we received 299 applications. We're able to approve 157. For Mpumalanga, 434, we're able to approve 227. For Limpopo, 529 applications were received. We're able to approve 281. For KZN, 1,149 applications were received. We're able to approve 581. For Gauteng, we received 1,752. We're able to approve 981. For Free State, 285 applications received, and we're able to pay 131. I need to indicate that today as well, we had some payments, but we are still to reconcile in terms of province-wise, how many have we distributed to all the provinces. Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you very much for the well-wishing. I really enjoyed working for government. And as the chair said, I'll continue to volunteer my services. Thank you.
Thanks, DDG Murunga. DDG Chetia.
Thank you, Minister. I will respond, honourable members, to the questions raised about the expanded public works programme and the destination development targets. I want to reiterate what Minister indicated, that all of the targets that were presented in our revised APP will be achieved within the current budget. So the projects that were projects in various small towns and villages that were presented in the revised APP are still work that we will be able to do within the current budget. With regards to the impact on the expanded public works work opportunities, we did present a downward revision in our revised APP of the work opportunities that would be achieved this year. That revision was actually based on the conditions on the ground. At that point in time, we had, of course, envisaged a very prolonged reopening of our sector. And also what that took into account was whether we could make the conditions safe for students who were in classroom learning to return to classroom learning, but also whether there were employers who we could place various participants on the program on. So the considerations around the adjustment of our work opportunity figures were in fact based on conditions on the ground. And I do want to confirm that the work opportunities that we stated in the revised APP, which was 2,500, will still be achieved this year. Thank you very much, honourable members. Minister.
Thank you, DDG. DG, I don't think there's anything for DDG Duma. If you can take the remaining and then.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Minister, I'm going to start with, I had hoped that Ausmrunga was going to deal with the tourism greening and some of the activities associated. But essentially, what the program, the sub-program does, it allows for applications from establishments. The establishments would then get to be assessed for the need with regards to what has to be retrofitted, what sort of savings can be realized in terms of energy or in terms of water and so on, what are the practices that were there and so on. Now, previously on this program, what we have been doing was to train youth, and then we get the youth to go and be the ones that are going to deal with the assessments and so on. Unfortunately, that seems to take a bit of time. And in the environment where the businesses are currently, there is a much more need to be a lot more frequent. We don't want to entirely lose the aspect of them getting some experiential learning and so on out of that. But there is a need for us also to recognize that the environment requires some expediency. And we would then be relooking at the manner of operation that we were running to ensure that we bring efficiency and speed into it, which will then ensure that the decisions are quicker and the processes are also quicker with regards to getting people to be retrofitted. The question that was raised by Honorable Makubela with regards to do we have a deal? Let me put it like that, for lack of a better word. Do we have a deal with National Treasury? No, we don't have a deal with National Treasury. We will all be guided by what the Minister of Finance announced during the budget, the last emergency budget, that going forward we are all going to be subjected to zero-based budgeting. It means we will have to make our case, and this is why I said we are busy and hard at work to look at the cases and how best we can actually position ourselves so that we could make a compelling case for tourism to be able to get resources. So there's no more baseline, only what is currently in the budget, the remaining billion plus 3 or so. That is what we have got. But come 2021, 2022 financially, we are not going to be having that baseline anymore. We will have to fight for the resources with everybody else. So our case must be solid, and we should then be able to present. We believe that the environment would also be in part a contributing factor with regards to where we are as a country and how ready are we with regards to getting back to certain types of operations. The other issue that that was raised. As I'm trying to look, yes, the issue about 12 to 24 months. Most people that are following journals, whether it's Wall Street or whether it's Tourism Pure and so on, this is what seems to be coming through, that this recovery firstly is going to be a lot longer than the recovery that we saw with the SARS virus. But let me try and demonstrate, illustrate what this 12 to 24 month looks like, and then out of that, then it will be a lot more visible. At the moment, what we have is a risk-adjusted approach. In the risk-adjusted approach, we don't have, as an example, inter-provincial travel, which means within that, we have not really opened up domestic travel per se. There's a number of activities that we have also still not seen coming through as yet within the risk-adjusted approach. Of course, we don't quite know from where we sit what the epidemiological data will show going forward. If it continues to be negative, we don't know what then would that mean in terms of decisions going forward with regards to these operations. In the event that, I'm using this as an example, in the event that the activities that are taking place now at a much smaller scale, and these activities again are taking place in an environment where people are even cautious of going to those places themselves. When we look at that, and without the borders opened and everything else, when we look at that and we say between now and December, if you go at that particular pace, and then you've got to add another 6 months beyond that, that takes you to 12. Given an environment where you're not necessarily going to be having any form of incoming inflow of people that are coming from other countries and all those kinds of things. By June next year, if between, say, January and June, there's an increase in those activities and so on, we are getting to a point where we may not even see those businesses getting to the first level where they are. So for us, recovery would mean the businesses, the level of businesses that we've got currently would have been back. There's so many businesses that have already lost out completely, and they would not necessarily be back. For us, it would mean that the levels of jobs would be at that level that we were before we got into this situation. There's a clear indication that there's a whole lot, and even in the survey that we did initially, there's a whole lot of jobs that already at this point in time would have been lost. So to get back to that, that's why we're talking about 12 to 24 months. And we don't know whether that is even going to be enough, but the reality is that the impact is going to be felt for a considerably much longer period of time than what has happened with the previous disasters, whether it was SARS, whether it was the global financial crisis and other crises that we have seen. But this particular one will take much longer. I think some of the issues are not.
Yeah, we'll answer them.
Yes, thank you.
We are not administration.
Thank you.
I don't know if TM has comments based on the issues before I come at the end. TM?
No, thanks, Minister, and thank for the members of the committee for the questions and the input that they've raised. Well, mine is just to emphasize firstly the point that the chair raised around the EPWP, that the presentation that we have made during the appropriation, I mean the APP is still stands, is not affected by by the current adjustment, because as we have indicated, Minister, earlier on, that the APP has been adjusted in accordance with what we're currently presenting. So the issue, especially what Honorable Muteka raised, is not affected. What the Minister said during the APP discussion in terms of the villages and small towns projects that are either at the feasibility or development, they still stand, they're still proceeding as planned. There are no changes on that. And then the issue, just to emphasize the issue that DG was raising around the green program, well, as indicated, it was they've been performing very well, but there's some good work that has been taking place. I participated in one program where graduates were unemployed, were the one that were running that program. Secondly, it mainly all those that benefited out of the program that I attended were people from the villages who has B&Bs and guest houses, and mainly women. That's a good thing about it. So I'm sure if we can proceed with it, it's going to make a lot of impact into people, into the industry. They're very happy, those women. They learned a lot about how to save energy, how to save water, and also. So it's a very good program, and I'm convinced that if we proceed with it, it's going to be of great help and of great assistance to small businesses, as the focus, it has been always like that. I'm sure that's what I want to make. Well, the issue of PE, colleagues, we must understand it's a government policy. All of us must not look at it from a negative perspective. Its intention is to ensure that it's a redress, to make sure that we transform the economy to benefit all South Africans, regardless of their color, race, or skin. So that's the intention of the policy. And that policy, has been there, and we can't deviate from it unless we've managed to address the fundamental challenges that confront a society, South African as a whole. Because if we don't do that, the economy will still be skewed and not benefiting the entire population of South Africa. So it's a redress policy aimed at addressing that. So all of us must support it and work around and make sure that we make sure that it works, so that we transform this country and this sector to the benefit of all South Africans. Thanks.
Thanks, Tiam. Let me first start. Honorable members, thank you very much for the questions, comments. We do appreciate. Starting with Honorable Gumbi, a lot of things have been answered. Honorable Gumbi, I think maybe the mistake might have been in the response letter. You were not copied. We did respond to the charter boards that you wrote to us. There was a letter that you forwarded to us. We responded to them. The matter is because their issue falls under transport, so they're not regulated by the Minister of Tourism. So that's why it becomes difficult to enter into another person's territory. So that's what we explained to them, and we guided them in terms of how they should be able to go by in getting their sector opening, because they need to get the protocols and all those things. And through Minister Mbalula, they will submit those through NetJoy. I think quite a number of things have been responded to. I didn't hear anyone, did you respond to the issue of the grading cost? We will deal with that in detail. You'll see it, Honorable Muteka, at when we present for SAT, but we do not have costs. So for this financial year, we took a decision that we are not going to take money for for the grading, but you'll see it clearly when SAT presents next week. I think others have been responded. Honorable Krambok asked me what advice will I give it to employees. I would say to them, when you get employment, for your sustainability and for the sustainability of the employer, I would urge you to encourage your employer and have a conversation to check if your employer is compliant not only on BE, but also on UIF, because one of the challenges that we see quite rapidly in the sector is that when the TERS were offered, many of the employers were not compliant, and therefore their employees fell off. Some of them were deducting from the salaries of the employees, and they were not paying to UIF. That's why as government, we took the decision that we're not going to penalize the employees who are going to pay them. So those that could prove from the pay slips that the money were deducted were able to. So this is sustainability for themselves and sustainability for the future. Many of those in the sector, by the way, Honorable Krambok, that I've talked to, they do acknowledge, and it's not even about color, both black and white businesses, any race. I've interacted with them. Many of them would call even to say, you know, Minister, we thought we were cheating government. Actually, we've learned a lesson. We want you to assist us so that we can be good businesses. Others were operating without paying UIF. Others would be informal companies, but when you look at their income, they are not even compliant with SARS, so we'll help them. And I've said to them openly to say, our responsibility as the department is to be able to assist you. One of the things I've given back to the chair of BE Council was to say, I think we need to find mechanisms of reaching out more so that people do understand the requirement, because many, even those who qualified, actually didn't. There's an email I received, Chair, from one of the beneficiaries who thanked me for paying, and it says when he had a discussion with many of them, they discouraged him from applying. And he says in the email, I thank God that I did not listen to them because I've received my support. I qualified, but they said to me, because I'm white, I don't qualify. And this is the misinformation that is dangerous for our sector. This is the misinformation that is dangerous for our communities. Because if we don't say things the way they are, we misinform people and they will not benefit from things that they qualify for. So I do continue to urge, honorable members, that we do make sure that when we communicate, let's communicate, because once we say only black, then even those that qualify, that have done everything, they sit back just on the basis of what you have said as a leader. So we do have a responsibility. And indeed, if we are to be requested to do something in terms of the grants or anything, because it's law, we'll definitely continue to apply. Because if we did not have people who qualified, we would not be spending the money as we're doing now. Honorable Defrators, I think DG has responded quite a lot. I don't think government is sitting and waiting. I've been part of quite global discussions. We are not actually not behind ourselves. We do meet regularly as ministers, have conversations to say, what is happening here? What is happening in that country? You do see, you note that even some of the countries that had opened are now closing. If you saw, Switzerland issued a statement that some of their lead scientists are starting to say we regret in the manner that we have done. So there is global analysis that we are doing constantly to look at what is happening, what are the lessons that can be learned. And many of them are actually do appreciate what we are doing. One of the things that we have decided as the department, for example, as part of going back into the global market, is to say, because we do know that right now, people, when they look at South Africa, they look at the numbers. If you can remember how we looked at Wuhan, that's the reality. Remember when China started having the numbers, how majority of the people, when they looked at Wuhan, they panicked. So you need to have that at the back of your mind, that when people see these numbers in South Africa, they start worrying because the numbers are looking higher and they want to do evaluation now. In response to that, we've decided as the department that we are going to develop what we call under norms and standards, what you refer as tourism COVID-19 protocols. This because our Act allows us to have norms and standards for the sector. And we believe once we do this, because we do have some of them in place, we just need to finalize. I was meeting with some of the business sectors to say, this is what we want to do. Can we agree on how we are going to do it? And we believe that once we do them, we publish them. This is one of the areas that will build confidence globally. To say, yes, these people are doing, they've got the virus, but in the tourism sector, they've developed mechanisms so that I can feel comfortable. If I am to go to that country when the borders are open, I will feel comfortable to do that. The other opportunity that we see as the department is on the district model, paying attention to the district. So we want to say, in those districts that are declared to not to be hotspot, that do not have the virus that is too strong, would want to evaluate the tourism activities there and start greening them as tourism-free, COVID-free type of a thing for that area and market to say, in this area, these are the activities, there's no COVID in here. So that you start saying, this is what we're doing. It's part of building confidence. We can't guarantee that people are going to come. We are not managing the pandemic. We are not managing the borders. But what we can do as part of being in that process, when we listen to the epidemiologists in terms of the trends, I think Honorable Krambok was able to look at it to say, this is what it means, because every day changes, every week it changes. Last month, if you asked me, I was confident about September. As we look at now, we are towards the end of July and we're told it's growing. So it changes every week. That's why your modeling and your work that you do has to constantly update. That's why we do the surveys to check where people are. That's why we constantly sit with what the epidemiologists give us, go back to the sector and say, okay, this is what it's looking like and what is going to be. So those are some of the things that we are able to communicate. We communicate with UNWTO quite frequently. We communicate with WTTC quite frequently. We talk with ministers. So there is that communication. WTTC represents the private sector globally. So when you go there, the people who are booking, normally who are tour operators, big tour operators and all that, rely on WTTC, what they're saying about those countries. So that's what we are doing to make sure that we build the confidence about our destination. And I think we'll talk more as well in terms of the destination planning and what we want to do when we deal with the issue of SAT next week. But the tourism recovery strategy, we are one of the few actually. I don't think there's many countries that have a document that we call it tourism recovery. We've consulted, we've made inputs. We are almost at the end and hoping that we'll publish it as part of building confidence. And in that, we are saying we are going to see recovery from domestic. The unfortunate part, Chair, is that we do have some of our attractions who are saying their products is not meant for domestic market, meaning they're not willing to reduce the prices, put packages that will be favorable for the domestic market. And those will continue to suffer if this pandemic prolongs. That's the unfortunate part, but we'll continue to engage them as we receive this information so that they can make the choices themselves, because these are their properties, these are their businesses. We can only provide with information, we can provide support and guidance, and therefore we'll rely on them also to be adaptable to the environment that we are dealing with. So I think quite a number of issues have been responded to. The issue of airborne, yes, there is that issue. We have not finalized the presentations from NCCC. I think once that presentation is done, Minister Mkhize will go on public. We've asked from NCCC that can they go on public to explain to South Africans what does this mean in terms of the details that are coming through. So this work, I will leave it in terms of those. I do hear you about the assistant for part-time in restaurants. We still have quite a number of areas that are not looked at. We were hoping that as we open these restaurants, the people who are workers in this restaurant will start getting reprieve because they will be working. But it's very clear that with the numbers continuing in most hubs where you are finding tourism activities, they will continue to be affected. Chairperson, yes, I agree with you. Quite a lot of things that you've raised. What we have done, we've not really said base case or worst case scenario. we've looked, as I'm saying, it's such a dynamic environment. 1 week you are sitting here, you say, okay, this is the scenario you plan. Next week, it's just moved completely the opposite direction. We're thinking that as we go towards this peak, we will start having stability of information and we can be able to say, okay, this is what. But what we had started in March, I think we will still use that, because in March when we started, we used 3 scenarios. The worst case scenario at that time, we were saying, or the best case scenario, we were saying, if we are able to manage the pandemic with everybody else globally quicker, then it means, and we were saying by June, I think May, June at that time, and then we were saying then the tourism would have less impact into it. Then the medium, we were saying at that time, if we manage the pandemic, yes, with everybody else, but then we manage it later, maybe it runs towards your September and all that, we still found it to be that we could still recover easily. But if others are recovering and we remain behind, that's the worst case scenario. It says to us, then we are going to suffer even the stigma because everybody else would have opened. But the issue with this virus, Chair, even those that think that they've managed, it has a way of resurfacing. So you can have a second wave, you think you have managed it, like those who have opened now, even closing the borders because they're fearing that something is happening wrong. So you are not able to exactly say, this will be my best case scenario, this will be my worst case scenario. We've done that worst case scenario and best case scenario, and we think where we are, it's not accurate anymore. We'll need to do, so we continuously do that. And once we reach at that point in terms of risk planning, we'll do. But I do agree with members that the impact of COVID-19 into the economy into the impact on the sector is huge. Ours is to constantly, that's why we advocated for opening at level 3 of many of the activities. And we worked tirelessly to get the protocols to satisfy what health was looking for. And we do believe that in that way it's sustainable. Because if you look at the fiscus and the fact that we do not have the necessary resources, our budget has been redirected. And I must say it's redirected to where it's needed, because it would not make sense to South Africans. If I'm sitting as Minister of Tourism, I say I have money and I'm spending it on marketing, but health says we do not have money for beds. It will be difficult as a leader to justify that in society. So that's why we've got to be able to understand that it's prioritization, and that's why we could accede to the request by Treasury, because we understood that it's about reprioritization and putting what is necessary and saving the lives of South Africans first. We do, and once we are at maybe October, we are clear that the virus is being managed, and maybe we can go and bid with National Treasury to request the money to come back, and we can still do marketing and cover up our work. We've not lost touch. That's why we'll come back next week when we present with SAT. Our hubs in terms of offices globally are operational, and they will explain how we are ensuring that we do not we do not move our foot on the pedal in terms of us remaining with our presence in those source markets. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, Lucy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Chairperson.
So I
yes,
can
we can
proceed.
hear you, Chairperson.
So can I proceed?
Yes, we can proceed, Chairperson. We can hear you.
Okay. The reason why, honorable members, I'm asking Honorable Makubela whether she can hear me is because there was a network problem on my side. For instance, I didn't hear the DG at all. So I had asked that in case of this catastrophe happening of network, myself being cut and so on, she must take over. So I just thought I must formalize that. Minister, we want to thank you and your team for really making sure that within the difficulties that you find yourselves in as a department, within the constraints of the budget in which you find yourselves, within the competing demands that are brought there within the tourism sector, and all the pressures that we have been facing, from those who have been going to the courts, from those who questioned your bona fides in the department, your intentions, and so you remain focused on the principle. So we want to thank you for that. And we also want to thank you for extending the hand to speak to those who may have not understood why certain approaches had to be followed by the department from the outset. So we learn every day, we learn every week, we learn every month going forward. Now, we want to thank you for that. In conclusion, honorable members, all of us in South Africa, we must understand that you having gone to a driving school and securing a driver's license does not necessarily mean that tomorrow you will not be involved in an accident. I want to repeat. You go to a driving school, you secure a driver's license, it doesn't mean that tomorrow you may not either cause an accident or be involved in an accident. So this applies to us who think that we are not affected or infected by the coronavirus. This applies to us who may have gone through the 14 days, 20 days, 21 days, 30 days quarantine. To think that because you have gone through that process, it means that you pose no danger to other people going forward. That is why it has to be compulsory. Whether you've got corona or you don't have corona, our behavior must be consistently the same, so that wherever we meet as South Africans, whether it's in a restaurant, whether it's in a bus, whether it's in a taxi, there can be assurance on each other's part that the risk of the virus being transmitted to the next person is almost minimal. So I know we want to open, I know we want to operate, we know that we want to make profit, but let's give the department, the government in general, that support that they need, ourselves as the society. Because we don't know. I may be thinking that I don't have the virus and I go to the restaurant and a mistake happens. And it means we'll be pedaling backwards. The achievements that we have attained so far will be pedaling backwards on those particular achievements. So, Minister, you're in a tight corner because the sector is pushing that we must open up. Now, that is understandable because there's pressure from the banks and other financing institutions for them to pay their loans. There's also pressure from the staff for them to be paid. There's also pressure to upkeep the infrastructure. If you have a hotel or a lodge, you must make sure that it's in good state so that by the time we open, you can be able to participate. So there's all those pressures on your head. You have the support of the committee in dealing with these challenges that you are facing. And we want to thank you that every time when we say, let's talk, let's engage, let's share views, you are available for that engagement. Yourself, the Deputy Minister, and the rest of the collective of the Tourism Department. Aus Moronga, Mudimu, Aus relates. Mudimu Baballe, Ako Hodise, Ofitagamo Hodileng Kate, Mutalohanyo, Mumile, Mudimu Ako Konza Hofikella, saying Chacho Batang Hofikella, Usa Karoli Molefa, Uli Janung, Carola Hela Rona, Yasicha. We want to thank you for the loyal service you have provided to the rest of the tourism sector in South Africa at large. Bahaisu, thank you very much, Minister, Deputy Minister, and your collective. Thank you very much. Honorable members of the committee, the rest of the issues like minutes and so on, we'll deal with them in the next meeting. So this is how we come to the end of this portfolio committee meeting today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.